All right, so I'm going to read from Abracadabra, Sunshine, my second collection of poems. The first poem is entitled Explaining Love, for my sister. It may be years before you read this, decades before you understand. One day, little sister, I might be your only friend. This is in our blood. I wish I had known sooner that Mom's back ached for months before our grandmother died. Before I left for college, when you were too small to help, we lifted her up the stairs because she could not walk, though her ghost legs said touch to her brain, itch to the fingers she could still move. I saw her naked, bathed her, and I am not ashamed. In Thailand, little sister, workers take yaba and stay up for days, knowing how it ruins the body so that they can make money for their families. This is sacrifice. I can't say it any other way. Now I'm going to set my timer here. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, guys. Here we go. 92. I'll do this one. This poem is entitled Explaining Sadness. For my birthday, Scott brought me a boomerang he found in an alley, and I tucked it into my belt, strutted around the bar until they kicked me out for having a weapon in my pants. At home, I hung it on the wall. Thought of the little girl who might have thrown it sitting at the window every night, waiting for it to return, like her father, who told her before leaving that accidents only happen to the careless and ignorant. I once slammed my sister's finger in the car door. Maybe I meant to. During last month's storm, an oak fell into my high school English teacher's living room. No one pointed a finger at the tree. A neighbor told his daughter the tree got tired and needed to lie down. That night, his daughter dreamed of being knocked over and not getting back up, of being swallowed into the earth. I miss the hills of the graveyard, swollen with gravestones that were never made because the families of the dead couldn't afford them. I say this to my mother, and I know there's nothing to do but pace the room until I have caught up with my shadow, and the feedback on the phone is the sound of my first girlfriend singing in the shower. Tonight, I'll take any distraction. I'll listen for any creature that cries because of the sunset, to any drop of water that thinks it is independent enough to leave its mother in search of the river. We make our own canyons if we drag our feet long enough, and if we refuse to move and are impaired by our depression, death sneaks up on its four spindly legs and rips us from our body like a sheet of notebook paper. Little girl, we know each other only by this chunk of wood, but I still imagine you waking, your hair folded over your shoulders like the wings of bats, crying because you are afraid of the future, its toenails growing beneath your bed. If we ever meet, I'll confess that I've been having the same dream for the last 10 years. A friend falls asleep and has a seizure, chokes on his vomit. His mother holds my hand. That drop of water makes its way to the ocean, leaves its trail on the beaches in Sierra Leone and Kudu, where the rain is good luck, and the amputees walk with their heads down to see the diamonds from the mud. 82. This is entitled Elegy for Los Alamos. In winter, the treehouse was bare and cold. The termites had invaded and eaten through the floorboards twice that fall. Frost built around the holes on the branches, the windowsill. There was no glass, so I held your ankles while you hung out and picked the icicles from the furthest limb, careful not to snag your sweater on the rusted nail where we would hang out flags. That winter would last a decade. We thought the ice would never melt. January, we slept with our cheeks to the shrinking wood. Every night, after flipping through your father's Playboy collection, he brought an undated calendar from the factory, and we spent the week eyeing naked blondes. The pages were wrinkled and smelled like whiskey. You confessed this was the smell of change, the smell of an early spring. We both hid our embarrassment because I had never seen a naked woman and your father didn't know the son that he was raising. On the cover, a woman held a breast in each hand, and the words over her head read, "Come meet little boy in Gadget." Her hair and teeth so bright, we couldn't look into her glare. Remedios. This is entitled Remedios, Flying a Kite. Beauty today is boxed wine, menthol cigarettes, a cat and a pen, the clear soprano of Joanna while I'm on the lawn. This is how I lift the dead on the anniversary of my grandmother's passing. This year that begins with an emptying sky, everything with wings restless and sinking. The Costa Concordia capsized off the course of Giglio. In the shadow of a palm, I tie a cherry stem into a knot as my roommate bends to pick a thumb-sized replica of a Jane Austen novel from the soil of our garden. Only the kale has survived. The ground is hard, won't sprout a finger or thumb. I throw a clay stone over my shoulder anyway. Think of my mother as Deucalion, who fathered everything after the flood. How alone he must have been there at the end of the world. The freedom he must have felt, throwing away the past and starting again the way my mother believed that after a storm, the world was new. But it hasn't rained in weeks. Bird shit dots my car. At night, when the wind shakes the city, I am convinced that soon grackles will fall from the clouds. They will come down like bloated bodies that rise to the surface after a shipwreck, or reverse firecrackers that explode when they hit the glass dome of night. New Year's Eve, on the entrance to the apocalypse, humans being human and in heat. The discomfort of the drunk and lonely, of having to call this home. Everyone naked in their own eyes, everyone the color of white rum and gin. The screams of the crowd as they all join in. My skin camouflaged my exit into the dark, the past wide as the eyes of parents straining to see me performing in my first play, The Second Light of Josiah, All Saints, 1992. What an angel I was. After forgetting my lines in that silence, giving nothing but a guilty wave that said I caused this catastrophe, sweat under the stage lights, and then the freedom of being hoisted from the world by a rope. All those white faces smiling, the night sprinkling its dark feathers around me. And Joanna is singing, and the sun is just tilting its head over the mountains, and the chorus begins. Again, my roommate is turning on the water, the clay separating like land does, or people. After the last cigarette is ash and the wine box runs dry and the cat has retired to bathe in front of the living room window, it is still today. My grandmother watches me go from her room, knowing that this is the end, like Remedios being pulled toward heaven, taking the blanket and the comfort from the nun. My grandmother, always rising otherworldly, one hand clutching a string that dissipates into blue to be taken, to want to go. Let's do that one. This poem is entitled The White Dwarfs. And the white dwarf is basically just like a dying star, like they condense down, and they basically give off all their fuel before they like explode or whatever. So it's basically just a dead star. The White Dwarfs, for Chris. I want to believe the Aztecs, that once you eat the heart of a dragon, you can understand animal language. I want to believe that Andromeda Galaxy is just a mirage, like love. Today, someone has been crying in the house across the street. Someone is masturbating just up the road right now. They sound the same to me. We aren't that different from the cicadas or the century plant. All we do is die. The sounds we push out into the universe take their time to arrive. Just yesterday, the radio waves we've been shooting out into space since the 50s reached the corner of our solar system. Somewhere, A boy is just beginning puberty, his bones mimicking the slow stretch of the universe. When he speaks in his sleep tonight, he won't notice the small crackling in his voice. A new word grows old. Time slips its hands in our pockets and laughs. It happens again. I started by writing, the story ends with your brother Matt peeling the tabby from the pavement. The skull crushed, the spots on its stomach, little constellations, a name. The body, milk warm, he places it on the sidewalk. Can't look at his date. She says, I think that's my cat. I think that's my cat. And knows. Then the lightning. Then the long drive home where you pass the remains of a car with its passengers burned to death inside. The year of sleeplessness, night terrors, and waking to women you don't love, your ex possessing your bones. This is an apology, because in Thailand, a monk gathers boys from the sex trade and sells them to miserable bastards here in the West. Because Commodores behead Roof's soldiers in Sierra Leone, and Roof cut off Commodore hands and dicks, spike them on poles, and parade the streets. In China, poachers kill endangered tigers, make Viagra from their bones. You complained, we are not here to be happy. And I agree. This is what we do. Drink alone at dive bars, reading Bukowski, crying for the woman raped on the reservation who can't tell her friends. Once, you were so drunk, you pissed on a stranger's lawn, looking in through the window at the family. Once, a brunette sat down at the table with us and barked. Where does this lead? That poor woman. If only the cat didn't have spots, or she hadn't seen it lying in the road. If only her father hadn't died a week before, or maybe if your brother had known just what to say. Yesterday, someone smashed my car window, but only stole a pair of shoes from the back seat. Yesterday, you woke with a pain in your chest, coughing up black phlegm and afraid your mother is going blind. Look what we do to ourselves, slipping a chloroform rag under our noses, lacing our love with PCP. All we do is survive, like the boy in a Syrian home found days after an operation to retrieve corpses from a massacre. He hid beneath the bodies of his parents. How he must have cried. You cried the same way the night the doctors avowed your brother would be a vegetable. After 2 hits of acid cut with PCP, Matthew threw himself through a window. This world is beautiful, only because of the massive black hole pulling all our light into its heart. Only because the scrub jay, witness to its own mortality, sings an alarm for its dead until it is joined around the body in a prayer only understood by the ash of the forest stretching away from its origin. Let us, like our universe, it will soon collapse. Let us die dreaming, pretending we will go on forever. Voices lodge as the terracotta army in the tomb of Xi Xinghuang. Let us be the paint that evaporates from their faces. Let us be that dust. Okay. Let's see. I've got to do a couple more here. Let's see. Do the title poem, Abracadabra Sunshine. Imagine the children who are little and far enough away they measure their lives by the gallons of dirty water they bring home, checking their height yearly against the hulls of abandoned tanks until they are tall enough to climb in, old enough to understand that even the native body is foreign, even the peaceful mind at war. I am attempting to form an argument. I am attempting to form an argument done with teeth, with the tender pressures of bone grown in gums like bullets in the chilled throats of rifles. Say, there is nothing in the way we touch each other, softly with the palms of our eyes. This is our narrative. This is our path to the abyss. The abyss, the individual letter hidden within the word. What we signify in being, always duplicity. What we mean to say is not forever. What we say when we say Nothing is the mating of letters, compression of ink on the pale lip of an envelope, the tongue, the moisture, and nothing left to hold it. Or nothing left to hold the difference between a lover and a zombie is not the same as the difference between a soldier and a snowman. At the center, we are always rotting, always melting into sticks and mud. Some kid will come along and use the bones from your arm as a rifle because we are meat and water. All right. I'll do one more. Yeah, I'll do one more. This is titled The Lazarus Project, which is a reference to Lazarus of Bethany in the Bible, who is friends with Jesus, who died, and 4 days later, Jesus did a miracle and brought him back to life. But also, the Lazarus Project is a scientific organization in Australia, who in the early 2000s decided to make it a point to try to bring back extinct animal species. And in 2017, they brought back the gastric brooding frog, which had been extinct. They found some cells and they were able to bring it back. And so their next plan is to bring back dinosaurs and woolly mammoths and all that. But apparently that's harder than you think, so they've done nothing since 2017. So they're part of the title. The only other thing I think you would need to know for this is there's mention of Falada, who is a very obscure horse in one of the Grimm's fairy tales called The Goose Princess. The too long don't read version is that this princess is sent to go to another land to marry a king, and her mother gives her a horse and a slave girl, a piece of her hair. And halfway there, the slave girl says, when we get there, I'm going to be the princess, and if you don't let me do that, I'm going to kill you. And it turns out that this horse can speak, so the horse is totally aware of everything, but doesn't say anything. They arrive, and the slave girl pretends to be the princess, knowing that this horse saw everything and can speak, and then has the horse killed, and has his head like hung over the gates to the city. And so this princess goes in and out every day to do her work, and she sees this horse who talks to her but never really says anything about this incident. So, the Lazarus Project. Not what you think. For Barbara, some things can't be explained. Your mother's illness, for example, or why science has invented a cell phone charger that runs on urine. Rio batrachus cilius has become the first extinct frog to be cloned. It reproduces by swallowing its own eggs and regurgitating its young. You say you don't know anyone who loves their kids but doesn't regret having them. I babysit for a friend on her birthday. By 3 a.m., her daughter's eyes are flickering street lamps at the mouth of the alleyway leading into sleep. At 4 a.m., her mother calls and says, I'm in the middle of sucking this guy's cock. Love is a black horse named Falada who has seen too much. When you worked at the amusement park, you were the first to find the man on the bench at twilight. He'd blown his head open with a shotgun looking out over the city. You said it was beautiful, the view. You saw the leaves weighted down by his remains, the tree that didn't move to stop him or get out of the way. We drink bourbon, and it's a wonder our stories don't end with the breath. They go on into the night like wars, satellites, and bodies who give up those bodies to the rain. How elusive we can be, even to our own skin. The doctors are playing Marco Polo with the gene in your mother cannibalizing her brain. They say it's like Huntington's disease, but not. I say science is the future's mythology. We just don't know where it ends. I'm 30 and afraid it's genetic, you say. I've been scared of everything since puberty. I've only ever slept with one man, and I feel grotesque, like Alice Hinman. You took photos, black and whites, for 10 years of your mother's illness. It settled into her like the stain of a tannic wine on a snowy cloth. Everything she was, taken. Her blonde hair and beauty, everything taken but her voice. I dream of the head of that horse nailed to the drywalled sky. What would it say to the body? She's not my mother. I don't even love her anymore. Flipping through your portfolio, I am struck by the image of her hand wrinkled over an ashtray. How she smoked, but now can't even close the dishwasher on her own. Your father yells at her for things she can't remember. When she had the first seizure years ago, he wishes he'd let her die. And if she only knew how the heart would rue. Sometimes being alive is overwhelming. Sweat is the skin telling our story without blame. The only thing that gets me through is reminding myself the sun will die. I finished a bottle of bourbon and try to talk of other things, what we are, asterisms in this endlessly finite funnel of vein and bone. We're dour because it's easy being inebriated alone. It only rains when we aren't looking up into the sky, faith working its way into the shoulders like clams into barrels of rock. Why defend the dollars? A coworker emails to say he's leaving his wife for you, but you didn't ask for this. You asked why people call this giving up. Because if you do have your mother's illness, you'll live longer than she will. You like movies and music, swimming in the ocean and making art. That's enough. Even science is starting to believe we might actually be alone, each black hole holding another system in its heart. At its center, another void with its own possession of stars, an endless tunnel. We are barreling through the universe like a slug. We may never know resurrection beyond the sacred walls of this test tube. Our bodies overflow with whiskey and things we cannot understand, like love. I brought you flowers to replace the bourbon. I left them on the liquor shelf. Try not to let it wreck you. Thank you.